and let me open it up.
Yeah.
I have a feeling though that it's taking a lot of bandwidth or CPU stuff.
Yeah.
And as long as my girls are having homeschool, which means they're getting their instructions through Zoom.
Yeah.
Let's see how this works now. Okay, now we're live. And now I'm going to open it up for everybody. So now the world will be able to see us. Are you ready for the world to see us, Mr. Brett?
Should have combed my hair.
You should have. I think you should have. It would have been a nice touch, I think.
Yes. And probably a nicer shirt like yours, because I'm just wearing this polo shirt.
You like my shirt, huh? Is that what it
is?
Okay.
I do.
Okay. Now, let's see if I need to play with the audio settings. Apparently, we're a bit loud. Okay, let's work with this. No, it's you're ruffling stuff. You're ruffling with things.
No, I'm not.
No, you're not? Oh, then must be me then. Okay, this is Sherlock Hoeferle and Brett Watson live from the internet. From Quarantine Central.
Yes. Hunkered down.
Hunkering down. So, Brett, while this is still a test, and while I have no idea how many people will actually watch this, I'm curious, how have you started adjusting working in times of coronavirus and COVID-19? How has it been affecting your work?
Strangely enough, the work not at all, because having spent the last 2 years transitioning a lot of my business over to virtual anyway, and getting a lot of clients comfortable with that, and quite frankly requesting it actively, it's been kind of only a small glitch. And but just today obviously was a situation where I was heading off to an in-person meeting which got cancelled because the Canadian border was closed this morning. So obviously it had an effect on that, but that's not going to have an effect on the actually ultimate session. So yeah, it will go virtual, and probably not only making other people think about virtual, but also honing skill sets in that too. How about you?
Well, a similar story. I've had clients tell me, please don't come to the office because we won't let you in. And they were very open to the idea of switching it over to virtual. A lot of our work has been virtual anyway for quite a long time. It's the clients that up until recently didn't even entertain the thought of doing this remotely, that are now beginning to understand, there is an option to do this in a different way. Okay, will that be still training? Is that still the real thing? Will it still tick the box of my requirement sheet that I have from HR? And then they find out, it's only physical distancing, not social distancing, right? We might be removed from each other. We might not be able to touch one another, which in a training situation is something to be wary of to begin with. But it's the physical distance that creates maybe a bit of an awkwardness in the beginning for those who do it for the first time. But overall, I don't see it as a big deterrent. It's just a matter of practicing it and being okay with the distance.
And I wonder if everyone needs to have a physical distance.
Well, some people don't, because you've been tested, right? Stop coughing. Okay. No, we're not taking this lightly. It's just a matter of being available to clients, despite the fact that we can't come to them or they can't come to us. I think it's only this might be the big shift that our industry and other industry have needed to accept the fact that we have the technology available already. We may not have the bandwidth, or we may have not always got the best robust internet connection or the best software available, but this might just be the one big case, the case study where all of a sudden new development will come from it. So it might just be the next developmental step into being much more comfortable and able with virtual delivery.
I think the point you make about the social distancing is, I think I saw you write something about this, is it shouldn't be social distancing. This is distancing, but social is still there. I joined a call yesterday with people from, I'd be losing count, but there are at least 7 or 8 countries involved. So and everybody was at home. Some of them had kids at home as well. But it was a really great productive call, and not only for that, but also it was just
this might be another productive
enriching call. This happens. The phone call. But it was an enriching call because it's just something we still existed anyway in these separate countries. And even though you and I get to work with clients, and so we get the connection with clients, some of the people on this call are not client-facing people. And I think they appreciated the fact that, I stood here just as I am now doing what I do in a normal facilitation mode. And some of them did observe and say, well, this is interesting. You look like you're actually prepared for this. Well, of course I am. This is what I do. This is how we interact with people. But I think we can now use that to support the other people in this field that don't get the opportunity to meet and interact with the clients that we do, and tell them, being an evangelist for this kind of platform so that they can tell the story as well.
And I've heard, or I've read that somewhere, and I'm not sure if I want to buy into the absoluteness of the statement, but somebody said if you're not embracing virtual training, if you're not at least dip your toe into this format, then you're going to be toast soon, and you're going to be out of business, because live classroom training may have seen, or may be past its peak. It may have jumped the shark, or whatever the phrase is, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if I want to buy into the hyperbole of this. However, I would say if you're not willing to accept that this format works and can be a viable alternative to real life face-to-face classroom work, then you may be facing some challenges.
Yeah, at least in a blended sense. There's also the argument to have a good blended sense to make the connection, especially for cultures. You and I do culture. There are some cultures where in-person and personal interactions in a real-life setting are important to build trust, start relationships. But once you've got that trust, you can then introduce them to this format. And I've worked with people from those cultures, and they have been surprised how interactive this can be.
Yeah.
And how it can recreate that. So it's just a matter of balance, also being respectful of the cultures, and be open everybody to the idea of it.
You're making a great point, because I had this just last week. We did a series of group trainings face to face, and this was before the big outbreak. And full disclosure, Yes, I was in Silicon Valley right before the cruise ship docked the shore, but I got away before it got really hot. Um, and we did training for a group of IT people. And arguably, IT industry or people in the IT service world have been the first ones, the earliest adopters in virtual work and distributed remote teams. And the training we did were specifically focused around working with people from India / working with people from highly relationship-based cultures, hierarchical and indirect communicators. Yes, that is India. That could be other cultures that fit into that bracket as well. And I was startled when I learned that some of these IT teams that are working remotely in different across different time zones to serve their either in-house customers or their external clients with IT support, that when they communicate with each other, they often only use like an instant messaging tool like Microsoft Teams or whatever they use internally, and then they hop on a call meaning audio only. I was like, are you for real? You have the technology at hand. You are an IT based department in a very well funded organization that puts emphasis on IT infrastructure. And you're telling me you're not using video in order to communicate with each other, especially across these cultural divides? I was like blown away. So, case in point, there was then one of these IT guys who said, yeah, and we were walking through relationship building, how important it is that when you work with people from India, that there is a robust, reliable relationship in place that allows your Indian counterpart to trust you. In our Western context, as I mean, I'm preaching to the choir, but I'm also hoping that people who watch our ranting here are picking something up from this. In our Western individualist and direct communication cultures, we are very task focused, and the relationship may be an afterthought in completing our work. That will not work literally when you work with India. So you have to have a relationship in place with your counterparts. So this US-based individual, a male, tells me about an interaction he had with his female Indian counterpart in the state of Maharashtra, and he was telling her about his out-of-work activities, some of his hobbies. So like, okay, I'm listening, great. So you actually shared something personal, private, outside of work with your Indian counterpart. I was already giving him double thumbs up, like, okay, you getting it. Yeah, and I told her about how I have a smoker in my backyard and how I smoke my meats and my bacon and how that's kind of one of my pastimes. I love doing that over the weekend, he says. So, excellent. Great thing to share. That's a personal thing that maybe some of your Indian counterparts have no idea what that is, and you share a piece of yourself. Excellent. And then he keeps on telling the story how she asked him if she were to come to the US, if she were to visit headquarters and they were to work together, if he would invite her home to his place to show him that. So I was like sitting at the edge of my seat and was like, yes, I hope you said yes, I hope you said yes, because that would have been a great way to deepen that relationship. And I said, well, what did you tell her? And he said, well, I said, I suppose you don't eat meat, so what's the point of it? And I said, you have got to be kidding me. You just slammed the door right into her face and you missed an opportunity to build a relationship. And he said, yeah, but what if I don't want her to come to my place? I don't feel that connection, and I don't need that person to be at my house so she can see my smoker. I said, yeah, but what are the odds that she will ever visit you? She's a low entry level IT support individual in India. What are the chances she will be on a flight to the US and actually have the opportunity to meet you? She was speaking hypothetically, and you could have hypothetically entertained that idea. and he didn't. So the point in the story is, yes, make sure you carefully build your relationships with those that require it to work effectively together. And B, I would still want to give respect to the gentleman because he did use the tools that were available to him in communicating with his counterpart in India. He did use video, and he did report to the class the startled look on her face when he told her that he probably wouldn't invite her.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, we definitely it's good. It's good to reflect on these things. I mean, it reminded me of a road trip I did once here in the US with another Australian friend of mine, with a young Chinese lady that had come from China. The first time she travelled outside of China, and we were doing a bit of a road trip around a set of trade shows. And on the road trip, of course, we're stopping in hotels and we're breakfasting and lunching. But the breakfast was the interesting thing for this. And she was so wonderful because she wanted to try we did some parts of this in what would be considered southern parts of the US. And there were grits and there was biscuits and gravy. This is something that this young Chinese girl had never seen before in her life. But as soon as she saw it on the menu, she was asking about this. And we were still foreigners too, we were Aussies, and we go, well, we were kind of saying, well, this is not really something we would eat. And she goes, but I want to eat it. It was fun. But this is somebody who we had a lot of interactions with over video calls, written communication certainly. But in that sense, she was here to represent our partners in China. We made her feel like an important part of it during these kind of conference calls that we were on. And when she got here, she felt comfortable, trusted, also valued, right? She was valued. And that was important because we used the benefits of the video to sort of do it the reverse way, as I said before. Do the video first and then do the in-person. That was kind of fun. And I wanted to also kind of think about doing virtual, also the materials. The materials we use when I first started digging into virtual and seeing the possibilities, the materials, we were trying to adapt materials we were using booklet form with clients. And, so even the simple fact of changing from portrait to landscape was something that people said, how are we ever going to do that? I said, well, we have to do it because it doesn't really fit a computer screen, right? So and strangely enough, there are still materials built that way. So we've had to adapt. We've had to adapt as trainers, had to adapt as facilitators, and the audience has had to adapt and kind of work with us through those interactions as we've tried to work this out. Just as we're trying to do with this platform here today, right?
So how do you keep, in your experience, how do you keep people engaged? Let's say you're in a mixed room, which has happened to me quite frequently lately, that I'm actually still in a face-to-face classroom situation, which currently is unthinkable, but up until 10 days ago was still the norm. And we still had people join the room via a platform like this. What do you do to keep people engaged? And by the way, before you answer that, I want to acknowledge that there were 2 comments already on our little thing here. So a person that we both know very well, Farzana, says, hello, friends. So back to Farzana. And Afam Bilson in Germany. Oh, man, this goes way back. I'm probably sharing too much personal stuff. Afam was, I guess, the first bartender I trained in my bartending job. Man, he's...
Oh.
Hey there.
So there'd be some stories to mine.
Not suitable for this outlet, or we would have to flag it differently. So how do you keep people engaged? How do you make sure that people don't start doing something else while they pretend to look at the screen and then fiddle around with their phone or start typing as they mute themselves?
Yeah, well, it's always going to be an issue, but the tools are set up in these platforms, especially the one we're kind of we're streaming here today, but we're using a platform that we see each other on called Zoom. I like to use the tools that are in there. There's whiteboards, there's all these wonderful interactive tools that are built into these platforms, specifically to try and keep people engaged, keep the content something that they have to interact with, interactive and engaging in that way. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise they are going, and look, I've done it myself. I sometimes, will tune out because something has distracted me. But I always find that when I'm actually challenged to engage, challenged to read, challenged to answer questions, challenged to give input, which again, we know is cultural. So we do this, we're blind to this even in in-person meetings, that oftentimes we don't, we think that people are quiet because they're shy. It may be because it's not culturally comfortable for them. We have to, as best practice facilitators, make sure that we're bringing people into the room, but also maybe give a heads up to the people in the room that we're not the only ones directing it. They have to be cognizant of it as well. Mm-hmm. So there's many different things. There's really no kind of one-size-fits-all solution to the way to do this, and oftentimes it's very dynamic and you have to respond in real time. So
right.
That's the skill set that people have. These are the skill sets that people have to build, and it inherently comes with practice. This is the thing. It's just do it. It's like we're trialing this because we don't know what we're doing, right? You did the wonderful job of setting it up. I just jumped on here and I'm being a part of it. But it's this stuff takes just doing it and getting comfortable with it. Maybe kind of taking down your guard a little bit and doing that. So.
And you said something that reminded me of something. I think the same skills or the same resources that make somebody a good program facilitator will also make you a good virtual facilitator. So, and I'm not claiming to be a great one. However, I am very full of myself and believing that I'm pretty good at my job. I found that in almost every training room, there is at least one wallflower who doesn't want to be talked to or does not want to engage at all. And sometimes, depending on group size, there's more than one. And there's always at least one loudspeaker. Somebody who is very communicative and very open to share information or their reflection of the content that is being taught. And occasionally, also again, depending on group size, you have one heckler who will challenge everything you say and will put into question whether we all should be here in the first place. Isn't this all a waste of time? And the way you utilize or engage these personality types in a live classroom setting is the same way you do in a virtual setting. And if you have the loudspeaker who knows everybody else on the call, typically if it's a group training and people know each other, which in my situation happens quite a bit, then the loudspeaker can be your helper in picking on other people in the room or identifying those who need a little bit of gentle prodding or nudging. And what you said earlier, that in some cultures people will not speak up until or unless specifically given permission to do so. I think that's a great practice to use in virtual settings. Actually, to go around the room and say, "Hey, person John Doe, your face lit up when Jane Smith said this and this. Do you have a comment on that?" And then that will prompt them to actually say what they think, which they may have not done otherwise.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, it's fun. This is great. I could do this. We should do this more.
Yeah, and we will, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you're watching this live or as you're watching this later because you just came home from work, meaning you opened your Facebook after you completed your work on the couch and now you are going to Facebook to have social time, because you've already been home, right? You did not go to work, did you? Good. So as you're watching this and think, what are these guys talking about and how does this affect me? Brett and I will be offering workshops. Some of them will be for free and it will be an open enrollment situation and it will cover the top layer of cultural adjustment. And other things that we're about to develop and nail down will be drilling a little deeper and we'll go into much depth. And that's for those of you who want to engage at a more professional level with us. And we'll make that available as well as it materializes. A lot of this stuff is still in flux as we are going through this new normal that we're all experiencing. And we're relying on you to tell us what it is you want. So we might be smart or think that we're smart, and then we find out that's not what you need. So what you need and what you want is what you can put down here in the comments or send in direct message or email, and we'll address it. Right, Brett?
Great stuff. That sounds like fun.
All right. Thank you. Mate. Thanks for the test. I think it went further than a test, but this was a good start.
That's great.
Let's do more of this.
Next time, maybe cocktails.
Next time, maybe what?
Cocktails and culture.
Cocktails and culture. Or maybe a cooking show. The culture.
Cooking show.
What was it?
Yes.
The culture crowd, and we said you could contribute the, what did we call it? The diverse in Vegemite sandwich? No.
Yes. I don't know how that was exactly.
Mate.
The culture guy, the culture mate.
Mm-hmm.
Culture mate, yeah.
And who are you? The culture gal?
I'm the culture gal.
The gal?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Brett. Be safe. And don't forget, wash hands.
Absolutely.
Between the fingers, too. All right.
All right, mate.
Bye.
See you, everybody.